Hey guys, how's it going? It's been a while since I've done a Fallout video, so many people have been begging for more Dead Rising content, so I've just been pumping out content like a rabbit on meth. And I wanted to take the time and go back to the basics as to what made my channel grow in the first place, and I feel bad leaving all of the Fallout fans hanging, so this is kind of my olive branch for that. And I also want to conclude my Fallout videos before I step into Elder Scrolls because those games have a lot of history behind them. But let me give you a brief rundown of what game we're talking about. Fallout 4 is a game that was created by Bethesda and was released in 2015. This game, so many years later, still has a huge fan base and is considered the last semi-decent Fallout game before we got, Fallout 76. I would like to say that the modding community is literally the entire reason why Fallout 4 still has life to it, because without them, this game would be on life support. But let's get into the development, and also, don't forget to subscribe, because I plan on covering Elder Scrolls next after I finish my Fallout 76 video, so you don't want to miss that. So for the development, we need to go back to 2009. Todd Howard, yeah, that guy, wanted to explore the world before the bombs fell. The original idea was to start in New York and end in Boston, but eventually they decided that because so many games around this time had released based in New York, that they should probably stick to something else. The team got together and started to work on the game that year. The lead designer for Fallout 3 would return to do the work on Fallout 4. This guy is Istvan Pele. He did all of the artwork for Fallout 3. While this was going on, Bethesda had their full attention on Skyrim, so most of the company would be working on that while pre-production of Fallout 4 was underway. Bethesda would wrap up Skyrim and its DLC content around 2013, so that's when Fallout 4 would shift into production. So, unlike Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas, Bethesda would switch Fallout 4 from Gamebryo Engine to Creative Engine, which is why Fallout 4 looks so much different than all of the previous titles. This is actually the same engine that Skyrim would use, because it makes character creation so much better. The reason why that is the case is because with Creative Engine, the character creation allows freeform, which allows you to click and drag how you want your character's face to look, instead of being limited by sliders that had a bunch of presets built into it. This would make character creation so much more fun and enjoyable. Like, I was able to make Beavis and Butthead character models, and there's nothing like making your character ugly as shit when you create a character. The new engine also allowed the environment to look much different. Creative Engine allowed for more dynamic lighting, which means that shadows can be added under any object in the game. This adds for a more realistic view, and the engine also allows the game to have many visual effects that were not present in other Bethesda titles, like motion blur, temporal anti-aliasing, height fog, dynamic disbursement, screen space reflections, filmic tone mapping, an updated material system for wet textures, and among many other things. Bethesda was able to add more dynamic lighting to every scene. This new material system also allows the world and items to get wet, and it adds that wet texture to the item. Oh, how technology has evolved. This new engine also allows for more open conversation with NPCs where you can view from first person or third person depending on your preference while talking to another character. This is different from other Fallout games because it adds for a more smoother transition than Fallout 3's instance conversation system where the transition felt rigid. The character dialogue also has a unique and context-driven dialogue, which I personally don't feel this way about the dialogue, but whatever you say, Fallout Wiki. But the game also allows you to back out of any conversation. As Todd Howard says, you are free to walk away at any time, or you can shoot him in the face. I also want to quickly sneak diss Todd here, but can you believe that people actually praised this man at one point? This guy has become such a disappointment.
You're a fucking disappointment.
But yeah, that's all I could really find on the development. But let's dive into the plot. The plot is really disliked by a lot of fans, so we gotta talk about it though. So, the story begins in West Virginia. Oh wait, wrong game. So, the story begins in Boston, Massachusetts, and when this game came out, I was so excited because I'm from Massachusetts, and I couldn't wait to see my state get turned into a nuclear wasteland. Because, I mean, living here already kind of feels like that because the people that live here look like ghouls, but they mostly hang out at Dunkin' Donuts and Cumberland Farms almost daily. But to see real ghouls in the Fallout universe in Massachusetts, I was so excited. Sorry for the quick tangent there, but the game takes place in 2287, which is 10 years after the events of Fallout 3, and 210 years after the Great War between the US and China that caused nuclear annihilation over natural resources. Like I said before, this setting takes place in Boston and other areas of New England known as the Commonwealth. Unlike other games, the game begins with the detonation of the bombs and the character and his family running to the fallout shelter. This game takes place in an alternate 1940s, 1950s timeline where technology has advanced the same way many people imagined that it would during that time period. But the story starts off with some basic character tutorial stuff like making your character and interacting with the environment, and then after talking to the Vault Tech dude, who has become a meme himself since the game's release, the bombs start detonating, so you have to run to the vault with your wife and child. Your character makes it there just as the bomb detonates, which was really cool when the game released. It was very unique. When the bombs drop, you are brought down into the vault where you suit up and then they put you into cryotubes. 150 years later, after going to sleep, the cryopods are opened by a group of armed men, and the wife of the protagonist, we'll call him the sole survivor to make it simpler, the sole survivor's wife is then killed and his son Sean is kidnapped by the mysterious group, and the sole survivor is unable to do anything because the pod malfunctioned and won't open, and eventually they turn on the pods again so he falls back asleep. When he does wake up, he finds out that everybody in the vault has either been killed or they're dead, and the sole survivor escapes to above ground, grabbing his Pip-Boy on the way out. After fighting through rad roaches, he finally reaches above ground where the vault opens, and he runs back to Sanctuary, which was his old neighborhood. After exploring the ruins of his old neighborhood, he sees Codsworth, and Codsworth has survived the blast and has been living in the empty shell of the home for 210 years. Codsworth tells him to make his way to Concord, which on his way there, he runs into Dogmeat.
Our new dog model is taken from...
Oops, my bad. Yeah, here's Dogmeat. You meet Dogmeat at a rundown gas station called Red Rocket. Haha, get it? After following the road for a little bit, you finally do reach Concord, where you see a group of raiders attacking another group called the Minutemen. After you defeat the raiders, you go upstairs and you meet Preston Garvey. After suiting up in the power armor and defeating the rest of the raiders and having to fight a Deathclaw, you go back upstairs and you talk to Preston, and he is looking to head to Sanctuary. After talking to Preston, you talk to an old lady who is high off of her gourd, and she somehow knows about your missing son and recommends that you go to Diamond City. After doing a bunch of side quests, you finally take the hike and arrive at Diamond City to learn more about this institute that the old lady was bumbling on about. You find out that the Institute has been kidnapping people around the Commonwealth and has been replacing them with synth humanoid robots who are distinguishable from humans. After talking to the reporter Piper, she recommends that you check out Nick Valentine, who is a local detective. But when you arrive at his office, you find out that he has been kidnapped by a rival gang who he's been investigating. You track down the gang to an old vault, and you go in there and you save him, and you enlist him to help you find the man who killed your wife and kidnapped your child. Once you enlist Nick's help through some investigative work, you find out that the man who took your child, his name is Kellogg, or Conrad Kellogg, to be specific. After doing some more investigative work, you track down Conrad Kellogg to an old synth facility. And once you track him down, he'll tell you that you'll never see your son again because he's in the Institute, and then you pretty much slaughter him. After you kill him, you find out that Kellogg has a cybernetic brain, which you need to access through a special doctor because he's dead now. And the only one who can do that is Dr. Amari. Once you get to his memories, you find out all this background information about how he was raised, what he had to do to provide for his family, and it's not a pretty sight, but eventually he joins the Institute and kidnaps Sean. His memory also tells you that Kellogg was after a scientist called Dr. Virgil, who is hiding out in the glowing sea, and Dr. Virgil knows how to activate a teleportation device that will get you into the Institute, so you have to find him. After trekking your way through the glowing sea, you finally reach a cave where Dr. Virgil is. After getting help from Dr. Virgil, which you have to do some side missions for him before he'll give you the chip, he finally gives you the chip so you can craft a teleportation device so that you can infiltrate the Institute. And depending on what faction you joined, whatever faction will help you get into the Institute. After building the device, whatever faction you joined helps you get into the Institute, and this is where the finale of the game starts. So the sole survivor finally teleports into the Institute, and once he arrives there, the sole survivor will run into a young version of Sean, who he'll believe is his son until it starts to malfunction, and then the older version of Sean comes in, and it is revealed that he has become the Institute's director, and he explains that his abduction was 60 years ago, and that the sole survivor has missed a lot of time. Sean explains that he was a part of a synth experiment, and since his DNA was from pre-war, they kidnapped him. If he chooses to join Sean, he learns that Sean is dying of cancer and they need a replacement director. So it's right here where a lot of your choices really matter, because depending on what faction you've sided with will depend on the outcome you get for the end of the story. If you have shown your hand as the enemy of the Institute, you'll be kicked out, and this will trigger multiple different endings depending on what faction you chose. So I'll just go ahead and explain those. So as the Minutemen, once you've shown that you're the enemy, you'll be kicked out and you'll have to defend the castle from the Institute. And afterwards, you'll have to go inside the Institute and blow it up with a nuke. And this is where you destroy the Institute once and for all. And that is just the general ending for one faction. The Brotherhood of Steel ending is basically the same, except you complete a couple of quests for them, and then you end up taking out the Underground Railroad, and then it'll lead to you blowing up the Institute again, so it's not much of a change besides for a few quests. And again, with the Railroad ending, you just end up pissing off the Brotherhood of Steel before blowing up the Institute once again, so it's all very similar. The only different one is if you decide to side with the Institute. The Institute's ending is you destroying the Underground Railroad and the Brotherhood of Steel, and before taking over as director for the Institute. And the Institute and the Minutemen will pretty much be the only two factions left by the end. But that's basically where the story ends. Depending on what you do, it gives you a different outro clip, but a lot of people don't like the story. Personally, I wasn't a huge fan of it. I will always be in support of Fallout New Vegas, and I know that makes me super basic as a Fallout fan, but I just really like the complexity of the story in Fallout New Vegas. I know it's just a basic revenge story, but after the revenge part of the story, there's just so much more to it. And that's what just makes the game so great. But anyways, I'm not a huge fan of Fallout 4's story. That just kind of wraps that up. The next thing I'm going to go into is the fan reception and release, and should you play in 2024, along with my final thoughts at the end. Fallout 4 released November 10th, 2015, and it received generally favorable reviews. Fallout 4 would go on to sell 1.2 million units within the launch of the game. The game sold more digital copies than physical copies, and this game had over 470,000 players playing on the night of its launch. Fallout 4 actually broke the record with the amount of concurrent players, which was previously held by GTA 5. Bethesda shipped 12 million copies to retailers, which I thought was kind of funny because more people bought it digitally anyways. But in February, Pete Hines confirmed that Fallout 4 sold more units than Skyrim did. However, he didn't provide a specific number, nor could I find sales figures that were accurate. There was a legal issue that arose after the sale where, when isn't there a lawsuit when a Fallout game launches? But the issue was with the Season Pass and the Creation Club. So when the game launched, people could buy the Season Pass for the DLC content, but then the Creation Club released, and that is considered DLC, and this made everybody pissed because they already spent money on the Season Pass, and then they had to pay again just to get the Creation Club. During the litigation in court, this was when Microsoft had announced that they had planned to purchase ZeniMax, which is the company that runs Bethesda, and this was anticipated to close in June 2021. I haven't been able to find an update to this lawsuit, but something must have happened because there has been no information, and Microsoft was able to buy ZeniMax without any problem after this, so God only knows what happened, whether they settled or did something behind closed doors. We'll likely never know. Many fans were upset because this delayed some of the Creation Club material, but other people were upset because Bethesda does have a reputation of being scumbags when it comes to lawsuits and litigation stuff for court. More people were just upset because they had already paid for all of the DLC content with the Season Pass, but didn't get all of the content that they were promised. So now, as for fan reception, there's a lot of things that people love and hate about this game. Like I said earlier, there's a big problem with the writing behind the game's story and some of the NPC dialogue, but let me get into the issues I've heard from bigger fans of Fallout 4 than I am. So, there's a lot of things that people love and hate about this game. Like I said earlier, there's a big problem with the writing behind some of the game's story and some of the NPC dialogue, but let me get into the issues I've heard from bigger fans of Fallout 4 than I am. For starters, like I said before, a lot of people absolutely hated the story. It was very short and it was very poorly written. The only reason why some people might not agree with this is a lot of this main story is bogged down by side missions and fetch quests, so it feels longer than it actually is. Personally, a lot of people just didn't like having to find Sean over other games where you get to get revenge and start another war. And Fallout 3 followed the same concept, and even that story is not remembered favorably. It's just a shame that they couldn't come up with anything better because it feels like a lot of these games tend to repeat themselves and not in a good way. The other issue people had was with the voice acting from a lot of the characters. It felt very dull and very boring. So many people were not a fan of the voice acting, besides for Nick Valentine and Preston Garvey. Nick Valentine was one specifically mentioned, had the best voice acting, but that's just one of the main criticisms. Another main criticism that a lot of fans had was that a lot of the RPG elements were dumbed down to cater to a bigger audience, at the expense of alienating the core audience. They also added a lot of weapons from older games, which a lot of people said felt lazy, especially when you're shooting with the pipe weapons, and those guns are absolutely garbage, and I feel like most people can relate, but you run out of ammo and you search through your inventory just to find the one pipe pistol that you haven't used that has an endless amount of ammo. A lot of people just didn't like the gunplay. I mean, it was a serious upgrade from previous Fallout games, don't get me wrong, but just, I don't know, the pipe pistols just suck, man. The last thing that people said was the lack of music. I know this sounds silly, but a lot of people didn't like how the music was very similar to the music from Fallout 3, and this ruined the game for a lot of people, having to listen to the same music over and over and over again. It just gets old very quickly. There's a lot of things that people don't like about this game, but That didn't stop people from enjoying it, at least. Even though everybody clowns on the story, most people have at least 200 hours put into this game, so there's definitely something here that makes it worth playing. Let me get into some of the things that people loved about this game. So for starters, people absolutely loved the exploration. The gameplay loop was something that was mentioned a lot because that made the game very exciting to play. This made people want to explore every nook and cranny and every hole in every building, and I agree with this because personally, being from Massachusetts, I was so eager to see all of the different buildings in Boston and Quincy that they recreated, at least, because that's the area that I live in, and I just thought it was so cool that they would choose Boston as the center of their game. That just made me enjoy this game so much more. The next thing that people praise are the graphics, and God does this game look beautiful. This game is a huge step up from all of the other Fallout games, and you can see it with every shading, every building, to every character. They look incredible, and that's something I can give this game credit for because it just looks great. Another big thing I want to give the game a huge shout out for is the modding community. I don't know anybody personally, but you guys are single-handedly keeping this game alive with your amazing work. Your amazing mods and fixes. The modding community is working on a London Fallout mod, which is just amazing from the videos I've seen. I feel like modders get such a bad rap, but these guys are doing God's work with those mods. Now we just have to see somebody mod Fallout New Vegas in 3 to look like Fallout 4. There's a lot more people like, but I just wanted to point those out because those are the big ones. Now the big question is, should you play this in 2024? So this game itself is definitely worth playing. The story isn't that great, but the gameplay is fun, and all the different messed up things you can do makes the game fun too. It's definitely worth checking out. This game is definitely one of the last good Fallout games, which makes me sad to see where this franchise has gone, because this franchise deserved a lot more. It's a shame that Bethesda has switched from making fairly decent games to switching to sucking the life out of all of your fans like the vampire that Todd Howard is. I've said this multiple times, and even Todd Howard has said that he cares more about creating a game that he can milk rather than making a fun and enjoyable game. Fallout 4 is the last fairly decent game to come out of Bethesda, and we can only hope that we'll see another decent Fallout game. We might just die from old age before we see another Fallout game. And compared to your options like Fallout 76 or Fallout 3 or Fallout New Vegas, Fallout 4 being the most modern one is definitely your best bet if you're looking to get into the franchise, because you really don't need to know any of the prior events for you to enjoy this game, so that's definitely worth playing. Now, even though I personally didn't love this game as much as most people did, I'm still a fan of the game. I'll pick it up every couple of years and dust off the cobwebs just to play a Fallout game with modern graphics and better combat. Fallout 4 has some scary ass creatures that you can go up against. There's a Deathclaw that hides in a cave in a swamp that it always scares the shit out of me, because I forget it's there and then I accidentally explore it and discover it, and it's the worst. But I do highly recommend checking this game out if you haven't already, because it really is a blast. Besides for the story, which is complete crap, I highly recommend it. I also plan on covering Fallout 76 next, so sorry in advance, but we gotta rip the band-aid off in order to be able to move to Elder Scrolls Morrowind. But I don't know, that's all I really have to say about this game. I really want to thank you guys all for watching this video, and if you enjoyed this, please watch another one, because that's how the algorithm works, and if you enjoyed this, maybe it'll recommend it to somebody else who likes this kind of content. Once again, I really just want to thank you guys for watching my channel. This is something I've wanted to do for such a long time, and I finally am at a point where I can do it, and I just love talking about video games, and I love making videos on video games. It's a passion of mine. And I don't know, none of this would be possible without you guys, and I really just want to thank you for watching. I'm doing this by myself, I write everything myself, and I'm just so happy that there are people out there who are willing to listen to what I have to say. And it's just been a dream of mine for so long to make these kinds of videos, and I'm doing it all by myself. And I love seeing the appreciation and the support, and you guys are the ones that make this possible. Sincerely, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for watching, and have a good night.